As fate would have it, the most dashing prince in all the land was also the most mean-spirited lad imaginable. His manners were terrible, and he treated his family, friends, and servants so shabbily that they eventually abandoned him. His parents were ashamed of his behavior, and feared for the fate of the tiny kingdom if left in his hands. They saw that his beauty was merely an appearance, while inside beat a cruel and ugly heart. The arrogant young prince was left to roam his castle and its grounds alone, as he cared for no one but himself. He did not bother to bathe or wear fine clothes. The villagers were terrified of his vile temper, and told tales of how he had taken on the characteristics of a wild beast. Sadly, the king and queen delivered an ultimatum to their son. By his 21st birthday, he must learn how to truly love another, and be loved in return, or he would risk losing everything. They must banish him from the peaceful kingdom if he failed, even though this would surely break their hearts. Years passed, and the prince had become increasingly sad. His life was passing him by. He had once been so handsome and strong, and now he was a recluse. He never took responsibility for his behavior. His anger prevented him from seeing himself and what he had to change. Still, he sought the answers that could one day help him escape this fate by finding goodness within himself. Fortunately, the prince learned to spend his days in deep thought. He pondered the meaning of the great literature of his time. He enjoyed listening to music of all kinds, from the humble sparrow song to the greatest performers in the land. Without realizing what was happening, the prince was slowly opening his heart to the joys and sorrows of the world outside his castle walls. Then, one day, the prince could not believe his ears. Was he dreaming? The soft, soothing sounds of a woman singing were drifting into the gloomy castle. He rushed to the gate, only to catch a fleeting glimpse of the maiden with the enchanting voice. "Don't go, oh please don't go," he whispered to himself as she disappeared. The prince suddenly realized how lonely he was for friendship. In desperation, he called out to her. Much to the prince's surprise, the beautiful maiden turned and glanced at him before disappearing into the mist that always surrounded him. She was, in fact, horrified by his beastly appearance, and trembled uncontrollably as she fled. She had heard all the stories about him, and yet a part of her sweet heart was filled with compassion for this man, who seemed to once have had every advantage in life. The kind-hearted beauty was startled when a few days later she received an invitation for an afternoon tea at the prince's castle. A shiver ran up her spine as she remembered the gloomy place and its shaggy inhabitant. Her family begged her not to go, and though fearful, she remembered something in his eyes that somehow reassured her. Timid, but confident, she set out for the castle. At first, Beauty could not look directly at the beast, so terrifying was his appearance. But when he spoke to her of art and literature, and music they both loved, she was surprised at how gentle he actually was. She made him laugh, and his eyes twinkled. He made her laugh and forget her fears. And for so many months, the beauty continued her visits, each time enjoying the prince's company more than the last. But no one enjoyed her visits more than the prince himself. In anticipation, he called for a barber and the royal tailor. He summoned the gardeners and the baker. The court musicians were asked to perform. All were amazed at his kind words and generosity, and so they did their best work to please him. The castle was once again filled with light and good cheer. It was on a glorious, sun-filled afternoon that the prince realized what had happened. He was truly in love with the maiden, who radiated kindness and beauty from her heart. Her goodness had guided him and changed him. But was there a chance that she loved him in return? He asked her to marry him that very day. With tears of joy in her eyes, she accepted, for she had always believed in him. The end.